Debbie Garcia was playing MLB The Show with Adonis Rosa.
I just got the show. I'd have to fill my baseball fix.
I got it. I go to play today, and it had a 4-hour
Yeah,
update.
5 hour 4 hour update.
Yeah,
Oh, geez, that a 5 hour download.
So are we doing two matchups each, or two matches like one from each? Like what you give one, I give one.
Well, matchups that like one or two matchups that stand out to you.
Yeah, I got two.
All right, perfect.
all right. I'll let
All
you
right.
guys lead that, and I'll talk about the plans for the site and everything going forward.
Mm-hmm.
We got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Pinstripe Prospects Podcast, episode number 7 of season number 2. A lot has changed since we were last here last week. We understand how serious the coronavirus pandemic is, and our thoughts with everybody who's been dealing with this all around the country, all around the world. Sports are on hiatus for now. Doesn't mean we are. And we're looking forward to. We'll try to help this show be a distraction as much as possible. I'm Ricky Keeler. Pretty soon we'll be joined by James O'Connell and site founder Rob Pimpsner. We're not gonna get into everything baseball. I know a lot of people want to talk about how this affects the Yankees. I feel it's not the right time to do that just yet. We have a long way to go in this process, and right now we're just going to focus on some of the other things in the Yankees organization. We have a lot of things planned, and we're going to get into that momentarily. We do want to remind you, you can follow us on Twitter at Pinstripe Pros, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. Please subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We're probably there. And give us a rating. Hopefully it's 5 stars, and we would love your feedback on the show. Things you want to hear us talk about, topic ideas, what you're thinking about the show. You can also call our voicemail number. Our voicemail number is 908-376-6360. So 908-376-6360. And with that, I want to bring in both of the people joining me today. First, my co-host, James O'Connell. James, how you doing?
Everything kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Life in general is just taking a real hit. There's nothing on television. Nobody's having fun unless you're an idiot and take a quick those $20 flights somewhere. But no one's. I'm not having fun. There's nothing to watch. There's barely anything to do. You can't go to the gym. It's really tough. It's really tough. There's nothing. It's just so depressing. Not knowing when we're gonna get baseball back. I guess they said April, late April, but then they scratched that, and now it looks like we're kind of heading towards July. Some people are saying, it's not fun. It's depressing, and we're just gonna have to battle through this. And if we do get through this, which I'm sure we all will, we're gonna have a hell of a fall between. The Masters being in the fall, the baseball playoffs being in the fall, NBA playoffs. Who knows when that's going to start? Shout out to 4 Brooklyn Nets, including Kevin Durant, testing positive for coronavirus. This is a serious thing. I don't want to get in. I mean, I have gotten into it, but I don't want to focus this podcast on that. Let's let this serve as a distraction. But yeah, that's how I'm doing.
Definitely. I agree with you because I think you look at everything. I mean, personally, it's tough. Like, obviously, there's bigger problems in the world where you try not to focus on not having sports. But as someone that also roots for a team that just lost their quarterback, it's a double gut punch in a way. But at the same time, we'll get through it, and we'll try to get through it as best as we can. I want to bring in, of course, Rob Pimpsner to the show. Rob, thanks for hopping on. I want to let you have the opportunity to explain what we're doing at the site going forward.
Hey, Ricky. Yeah, it's great to be here. It is like a somber time because no one knows what's going on, and this kind of pushed us all back a lot. And we have a really good conversation coming up on this podcast with former Yankees pitching coordinator Danny Borrell. But on the website, we created an emergency plan real quick where we're interviewing as many Yankees prospects, Yankees minor league coaches, and getting as many features done as we can until we get baseball back. It's funny, this whole thing started when I was literally packing to head down to Tampa, Florida for minor league spring training. Had I boarded the flight, I probably would have been in a 2-week quarantine right now. But you know, I feel sorry for a lot of the Yankees players now that are down there. Like they're just biding their time until the season starts. And a lot of you guys don't know this, but minor league baseball players, they don't get paid unless it's the season. So they're not paid for spring training. They haven't been paid since September, and so it's really tough on them. So I've been keeping contact with a lot of them, and unfortunately we had the news that a couple of them have come down with COVID-19, and they're in isolation and everything. They're doing fine. I'm not going to say their names because honestly, we have no business knowing who's who. I'm not going to put that stigma on the players. It's hard enough being a minor league baseball player without something like that being attached to your name, and I just feel it does a disservice to them. And so I'm not going to say who they are. But, unfortunately, because of that, all players in camp and coaches were sent back to their hotels or apartments. And, they're in a 2-week quarantine as of right now. And, just to get you guys thinking about how many people that is, the Yankees had about 200 players in camp. And God knows how many coaches. I didn't even count the number of coaches. But, it was a large number of people, and they're all down in Tampa, are all in isolation and in quarantine right now, and just making sure they're all safe. But on the website, we have trying to come up with some emergency plans. If you be following us on Twitter at Pinstripe Pros, we'll go be doing some MLB The Show live streams playing as minor leaguers. So we're going to start that up pretty soon this week. We're going to be doing interviews with a lot of players. We're going to be unlocking some interviews, so not everything will be behind our paywall, our dugout subscription. So you guys get a taste of what it is. We encourage you all to buy a dugout subscription. That really helps us, cover the Yankees minor league system and bring you some great interviews, bring you some great content from throughout the season. There's going to be a lot of stuff once baseball going on. We're going to be in full force going forward, covering the Yankees organization and bringing you a lot of content, whether it's video, whether it's, whatever. We'll go be working hard to give you that. And I'll give it back to Ricky now.
Thanks, Rob. And of course, again, it's a very sensitive time in the world, and we'll try to get through it as best as we can. We also have a surprise for you for this podcast. I'm going to get to that in a little bit, but I want to add on more information on the dugout subscription that you can apply to. So I definitely want to get into that. You can again, it's a new era of Pinstripe Prospects. We're now providing exclusive minor league content to paid subscribers with our dugout membership program. You get scouting reports, player interviews, features, and much more in addition to some of our free major league coverage. Sign up for our dugout membership program. Again, $7 a month or $63 a year. You can win some great prizes, some great giveaways that we're doing. So you definitely want to take part in our dugout membership program to be able to read the things that Rob has provided as part of the content going forward. And coming up right now, we have a great treat for you. You're going to hear our conversation with former Yankees pitching coordinator, now Georgia Tech pitching coach Danny Borrell. It's a great conversation. You're going to learn a lot. And we're going to talk a little bit on the other side of the conversation about some of the things Danny mentioned. Getting to some of what he's doing at Georgia Tech, what he's done in the Yankees organization in the past, some of the pitchers he's liked, and I think you'll definitely enjoy it. So check out our conversation with Danny, and we'll be back on the other side after this. And joining us now here on the Pinstripe Prospects podcast, joining myself, Rob Pimpson, the founder of Pinstripe Prospects, and James O'Connell, is former Yankees pitching coordinator Danny Borrell. Danny was the Yankees minor league pitching coordinator from 2015 to 2019. Before that, he was a pitching coach in the Yankees organization from 2009 to 2014. He He was drafted by the Yankees out of Wake Forest in the second round of the 2000 MLB Draft and played 9 seasons in the minors with the Yankees and Oakland Athletics organizations. In 138 career minor league games, to course 120 starts, he had a 3.49 ERA with 551 strikeouts, over 675 innings pitched. Today, Danny is the pitching coach for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets in the ACC, and we're glad to have him on our podcast today. Danny, welcome. How you doing today?
Everything's good. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Absolutely happy to have you. So I want to get started with talking about, obviously you didn't get a chance of a full season with Georgia Tech, unfortunately, but what is the one thing you've enjoyed the most about that job so far?
I think overall it's just been a change of pace for me. I think, for me taking this job here, I was looking for just a little something different. And, being the coordinator for the Yankees, obviously one of the best jobs you can have. And it was an honor to have it for 5 years. But, you're in charge of 170 plus pitchers. You're in charge of 15 pitching coaches. It's a 24/7 job. And, while I loved it, I started getting to the point where I'm 40 years old. I have a 13-year-old son who I want to be around. And I just, I was fighting that battle between, all right, do I stay with the Yankees or this opportunity came up? But, it's been great being home. My son was with me pretty much every single game, either in the dugout, going on the road with us, and then just being home with my wife. I don't think she's too happy with me being home right now, but other than just being around her 24/7. But no, it's been great.
Danny, the one thing that we saw with the Yankees pitching coach job, and as it opened up with Larry Rothschild, kind of walking out the door there, is that they kind of honed in on college pitching coaches. Within your short time down there, are they more generally focused on the analytical side of the game? Are they more open to new technologies than maybe some of the traditional guys that we have up in the major leagues today?
No, I don't think so. I think what is a big factor in this is, social media plays such a big role. And obviously, we're doing this right now, but, it's when I was with the Yankees and those pitching coaches there's only so much information you want to give out to the public. It's, like something I posted today. I'm probably not going to post a lot of stuff on our players or prospects we're looking at because, it's proprietary information that I want to keep, to myself. I mean, same thing with the Yankees. But what you can have in high school and college is the ability to get on social media, throw some ideas out there, and, it's for everyone to see. Now, are there different areas of focus from college to pro ball? I'm still really, really new at this college thing, but, I think in both arenas you have very bright and open-minded, forward-thinking minds. It's just a matter of, just that arena that you're in. Pro ball, got to keep it proprietary. And then college, high school, you're obviously able to, put some thoughts out there.
While you were at the Yankees, Danny, you worked with so many different pitchers. So this might be a tough question for you, but which pitcher do you think, in your opinion, had the best fastball that you worked with and best off speed that you worked with?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the best breaking ball that I worked with was Dylan Betances. I still catch my bullpens, but I remember catching Dylan, and he's coming back from Tommy John, and he's throwing some curveballs in there that I just didn't think were possible to move like that. And obviously he's held on to that since he's been in the big leagues, but what an imposing figure, 96, 98, 99 miles an hour, but his ability to throw that breaking ball for a strike at any time and just the spin associated with it and how firm it breaks, how quick it breaks. As a catcher, as a pseudo catcher, I'm not a real catcher, but I would almost chase the ball with the mitt. And that's the one thing you should never do as a catcher is you start chasing the ball where it's going to go. So the ball was actually beating me to the spot, and that just I haven't seen that. Manny Banuelos, another one. Great breaking ball, great changeup. Obviously lefty. And he's been in the big leagues a little bit, right?
Yeah, he's had some bigs.
Shout out to the Killer Bees, man.
That's right. Exactly. And best fastball, man, there's been quite a few, but Severino, when he first started taking off, when he first signed, it was 88 to 92. But you knew something big was in there. I didn't think it was going to be 96 to 100, but his ability to just throw that wherever he wanted to at a young age, and for him to do it with elite velocity was just awesome to watch. So much fun to watch.
Danny, a guy that's kind of had Twitter going crazy, Pitching Ninja, and everyone really who tuned into the short spring training we had was Clark Schmidt. Mm-hmm. In your time that you worked with him, you saw him. What can you tell us about Clark Schmidt aside from what we saw on the mound in spring training?
I think first and foremost, what you can't see is what's happening inside his head. He is confident. There's a quiet confidence about him, and it's not arrogance by any means. He knows that he's going to be pitching in the big leagues, and he doesn't walk around, like, oh, look at me. But I mean, you just know, just talking to the kid, that, like, yeah, this kid belongs, and he's going to be a fixture in New York, and and he just happens to have really good stuff to back it up. Obviously, when he first got drafted by us, if Damon is taking this kid with the 16th overall pick, we know this guy's a stud. But what he showed last year when he came back from his injury, a 2 and a 4 seam, right when I left, he was, still throwing both. It looks like he's really honing in on the sinker nowadays, but it's really good command. His little 4 seam's got a little small cut to it. His 2 seams, legit sinker. And his 2 breaking balls, curveball and slider, obviously wipe out major league pitches, and that changeup isn't far behind.
Yeah, one thing I really like about Clark Schmidt, you're talking with him, he's a student of the game. He's very big into these new technologies, and especially like all the TrackMan data and the Rapsodo data that you guys can get. So let's talk a little bit about these technologies. I know the Yankees have been one of the teams that's more on the forefront of these technology. They've been using TrackMan for many, many years now, and even using video to make sure all the games are recorded. Something simple like that at the minor league level, and using Rapsodo and using the high speed cameras. Is there any specific one of those tools that you feel is probably the cream of the crop?
I think TrackMan has done a heck of a job, especially with the new TrackMan that just came out. We actually just got it in, and I was having fun with it today with my 13-year-old son on a recreational baseball field in the middle of Roswell, Georgia. So it was, I don't think that field has ever seen a device like that on the field. But TrackMan does a tremendous job, and each one offers something different. So, Rapsodo offers the ability of, it's very compact. You can move it around. It measures spin efficiency, which TrackMan does not do. You can compute it on TrackMan, but spin efficiency for Rapsodo, for Yakkertech is another one. But I think they all serve their purpose. But it's just like anything else. You can have all this information, you can have the technology, but it's how you use it, and it has to be a very clear and concise path of how you're going to use this technology. Because if you don't have someone that knows what to do with it or knows how to decipher the information, then it's useless. So I think that's what the New York Yankees do a tremendous job of, and they've kept it very under wraps. Their analysts and their analytical team and the technology involved, the Dodgers, the Astros, they get a lot of the pub, but they're still chasing the Yankees. It's the amount of resources that the Yankees have it's endless. So, everyone's chasing them, but they've done a nice job of keeping it quiet.
Yeah, I agree. And there's something that just spoke about that I really want us to elaborate on. And something I've learned a lot over the last year or so is the concept of spin efficiency. Everyone's talking about spin rate because they see it on StatCast and all that, but they don't really understand what spin efficiency is. So can you explain a lot about that concept in terms of pitching?
Yeah, and it's there's a lot of articles out there on it, and it makes a ton of sense once you just break it down to there's two ways to spin a baseball. It's transverse spin, which is front and back, and then there's gyroscopic spin, which is side to side. A true slider, which is thrown with 100% gyroscopic spin, just think about it as a bullet going through a rifle. The barrel's rifled because as the bullet spins, you want it to spin because it's more accurate. It doesn't move as much through the air. So that would be a 0% spin efficiency baseball. A true slider thrown at 0% spin efficiency is but just exactly that. It's a true slider that doesn't have movement, 0 vertical, 0 horizontal. Perceptually, it has movement, but when you're measuring it does not have movement. A true fastball that is thrown with 100% spin efficiency has no side spin whatsoever. So, spin axis, that really doesn't have an effect on the spin efficiency. But, you get guys that can spin they're at 83% spin efficiency. So what that does is the spin efficiency, the lower it goes, the 80-85% spin efficiency fastballs, you're actually killing your vertical and your horizontal with that. And, I know a lot of guys have done this. We have a guy here at Georgia Tech, Jonathan Hughes, who he was right in that 80-82% spin efficiency, and it was killing his vertical. So even though he was throwing 93, 96, it was still right in the middle of that no-fly zone. It was 13, 14 vertical, 11 to 12 horizontal, which is right in that happy zone for hitters. So trying to change that spin efficiency to get it closer to 100%, that's when you're able to take charge and be able to take advantage of velocity.
Yeah, it's one thing I've learned doing my research on a lot of this stuff is like when you have a fastball, let's say with a higher true spin, you could get away with that more in the upper part of the zone versus a lower spin fastball. So tell us a little bit how like that affects the movement of the pitch. I know lower spin fastballs tend to sink more, and the higher spin has the perception of it rising a little bit.
Yep.
Even though technically it doesn't really rise, but it has that perception. So can you talk a little bit about how that works?
Yeah, and I think sometimes spin rates is the sexy thing, and vertical lift and all this stuff. But what's lost in it is the release height, and release heights are going to vary between 4.5 to 6.5 feet. You'll have your outliers in there that go above and below, but it's a lot of this is release height and side horizontal release height, how far away from your body. So you'll have guys that are 6 feet 3 inches tall with a release height of 4 feet 8 inches, which really means it's just a low release slot. Guys may push the ball a little bit. So a guy that spins it at 2,200 RPMs at a 1230 spin direction with a release height of 4 feet 8 inches, that's going to be a better fastball than a guy that releases it at 6 feet or 6'2", just because perceptually to the hitter, he's pushing the ball. It should come down a little bit more than it really does. So, release height kind of gets lost in all this, but it is a huge factor in the perception of how this fastball is moving towards the plate.
That's cool. Like one of the new technologies that everyone's really starting to use is those new Edgertronic cameras.
Yep.
And I'm a big fan of those, just the technology side of it. But being able to see a guy's motion and see the ball in slow motion, how is that translate to coaching and working with these guys? How does that help you guys out?
I tell you what, it is very, very beneficial for the pitchers themselves because, we give them this data, and you can look at a Rapsodo, Yakkertech, TrackMan all day long. You can look at it, but they don't get the visual component of, hey, this is how my hand looks at release. And that has been such a great tool, obviously with the Yankees, but here at Georgia Tech, having that tool and just showing the pitchers, So we set it up for every single bullpen. And, there was one left-handed pitcher we were really working on a breaking ball. And in his head, he thought he was doing the correct technique of, just with the breaking ball, the curveball, trying to get that middle finger in front of the baseball. But as soon as he saw it on Edgertronic, he's like, oh my God, that's not even close to what I'm feeling. And it was an instant fix for this kid. Now you have to have the aptitude and the ability to make the alteration, but it's been such a great tool just on a visual side of things. And, for me, that's the way I use it. I use it as a visual tool, and I don't do much coaching from it per se. It's just more of the, here it is, boy, kiddo, this is how your fastball comes out of your hand. This is what 80% spin efficiency looks like, and here's how and why you're doing it. Let's try to do something different. And then he gets the visual right away. You pair it up with the numbers, and then, it just gives them an easier way to make a change.
Yeah, a lot of these technologies are just so really interesting and how they could be implemented. I know there's also the Modus sleeve. I don't know if that, but that is just a really interesting piece of technology that can measure a pitcher's arm and all his biometrics.
Yep.
While he's on the mound, and stuff like this is just really leading the charge in terms of pitching development and getting that data. And a lot of teams, I'll use the Astros as an example. They don't really send scouts out anymore. They do a lot of it from video and a lot of it from TrackMan data, etc.
Oh yeah.
And I know you were really at the forefront of a lot of this stuff with the Yankees leading these programs and stuff like that. And I know they just built the new labs at the Himes complex, and unfortunately we haven't had a chance to see those yet. But stuff like that, how important it is to have this stuff implemented at the lower levels, at the minors, and keep it as they move up through the system.
It's very instrumental because you're looking at, and I would say, you can break it down in a couple different buckets. You look at it from a AAA reliever, who, maybe has already gone. He's been up and down a little bit in the big leagues. So a pitching lab for him may not be as instrumental as it would be for a young high school kid or a young Latin kid that just signed, especially from a biomechanical assessment standpoint. You're pretty much who you are. If you're a 26-year-old AAA reliever, you are who you are, and you may have some biomechanical inefficiencies here and there, but at that point in your career, that doesn't weigh as much on your development plan. So he would probably be more directed towards pitch package improvements and pitch design. A young high school kid, a young college kid, a young Latin kid, you get him in there and you can measure that kinetic chain. You can measure biomechanically what he does well, what he doesn't do well. That gives you a nice head start on his strength training program, his medical side of things, how his body moves. And once you have those, you can really direct yourself into a good development plan for that guy to help him, just accelerate that learning curve, accelerate that development curve. And just, it helps you abbreviate the plan.
Something that you just mentioned that I'm really interested to learn more about, and I'm just at the beginning of learning about this, is the concept of pitch design. What is that?
Yeah, it's a very very scientific way, or a very new age way of just saying getting your pitch package better, and pairing up what goes well with each other. I mean, that's pretty much what it is. It's, using Severino as an example, since he spins the ball so well, fastball wise and on a certain axis, he's not going to be a two-seam player just because he spins the ball really well on a good axis. And, I'm just using him as an example. I don't have his numbers right in front of me, but, there's certain buckets that guys fall into. And, so it's easier to really direct them in a way that's going to help them design a pitch package that best fits that specific pitcher. So, that's where the Rapsodos come in, the Acrotex, the TrackMan, just being able to pair up a pitch package that, is going to help them succeed at the major league level.
Danny, now being the pitching coach at Georgia Tech, and you worked with a lot of the lower level pitchers all across the organization for the Yankees, how have you taken that experience and brought it into the college game where a lot of these kids you're working with, at least some of them, maybe are getting introduced to these higher technologies and different analytics for the first time? What's that learning process like for them?
For them, especially here at Georgia Tech, I mean, this is an institute of technology, and a lot of our kids are engineers. And, it's pretty safe to say I'm usually the dumbest person in the room when I walk into a staff meeting with the pitching staff. And so they are very adept at this kind of information. And so what I was doing in the fall is I would just introduce one piece of technology at a time. Whether it was Rapsodo, TrackMan, Yakratech, I would just sit down, pretty much have a classroom, set up and say, all right, boys, here's what we got, and here's how we're going to use it. What kind of questions do you have? But in terms of, that transition from pro ball to college, I mean, honestly, it's as seamless as a transition as you can get. You're dealing with the same type of players. Now, obviously, in pro ball, we're dealing with, we have our high-end guys here, but in pro ball, there's many more of those high-end talents. But, you're dealing with a very similar age group. I'd say it's probably a little bit easier in college just because of the language barrier that you don't have to deal with. In pro ball, pretty much half of your population there they're Latin kids. And so you have that language barrier there. But, it's the transition that for me was seamless in terms of, the technology.
So you find for each pitcher, you take like one or two certain pieces of data to give them, because while you have the language barrier in the pro ball, I feel like in college you also have the case of trying to have them balance being a student athlete while being at a premier level too. You don't try not to cram too many things in their head as they try to focus on different things.
That's a great point. Yeah, so that's the wrestling match that I have on a daily basis is, and same thing in pro ball. It's how much information do you want to give them? And, I have always done this, but, I want these guys to have the information. Now it's my job to teach them the information. And if I just blindly just hand out information to these guys, that's when they get overwhelmed. But when you are able to teach them the information, when you're able to help them understand what you're looking at, it makes it easier on them. But that's been a tricky thing for me, is obviously being here for 6 months, just a little different scenario than it would be in pro ball.
Danny, the Yankees, really, it's difficult to fly under the radar in the New York market, even as a prospect. But in the system, is there any guy, any specific arm or anyone in general that has kind of flown under the radar that may be approaching us in the near future at the major league level?
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. I mean, I started my whole Twitter page last year just for that fact of under the radar kids in our system. And it just turns out, I mean, it's hard to find any under the radar guys anymore, just because of the technology, because of the social media. I mean, their names are getting out there, which is great. I'm a huge fan of Tanner Myatt. Obviously the physical tools are through the roof. It's a 6'6" righty, and I mean, he's going to struggle a little bit with command, but I've seen him up to 101, and it's just a lightning quick arm. It's deception. He strides across his body. It's a low release, elite spin, elite movement profile. He's that typical, or he could be that reliever that absolutely shoots through the system, and before you know it, he's a premier setup guy in the big leagues. I mean, he has the stuff to be a closer without a doubt. But, that would be a guy to certainly watch as he goes through the system, because if it clicks, it's going to be really special.
Last question for me, Danny, is you now at Georgia Tech, but you played your college ball at Wake Forest, I mentioned earlier. What does it mean to be back in the ACC?
It's been great for me. I love the atmosphere here. Obviously, like I said earlier, this decision was made, obviously central figure just around my family and how I wanted to live my life. And, it's so being here in the ACC, being here at Georgia Tech, I mean, obviously it would have been, I mean, I had the opportunity to go to Wake Forest on a couple different occasions Obviously, going to your alma mater is a big deal. It just wasn't the right time when they approached me. But, just being back here, and I mean, heck, I have several of my close friends who are coaches here in the ACC and SEC. So, it's that same fraternity. Once you're in this fraternity of baseball, it's crazy. Just the levels of separation or lack thereof that you have between coaches and players, but it's been great. I absolutely love it, and to be here at Georgia Tech under Danny Hall, who's been here 27 years, it's absolutely ridiculous. He knows more about baseball, or he's forgotten more about baseball than I'll ever know.
I think we all learned a lot here from this conversation. Danny, again, thanks for hopping on with us. We really appreciate it. We'll talk again soon. Thanks for the time.
Of course. Thanks, guys.
That was our conversation with Danny Borrell, former Yankees pitching coordinator, now pitching coach at Georgia Tech. James, I think speak for the both of us, we learned a lot from that conversation. I know we could dive into so many things. Initially, what did you take away from it?
Yeah, a lot to digest there. Probably one you're going to have to listen back a couple times to kind of really grasp everything that was said there. But it's really so interesting to see where the game's heading, where the game is at. And with this technology and stuff, you always knew, that analytics was kind of taking over in a sense. But, man, that deep dive kind of gives you a really good idea of what's actually going on behind the scenes and just how much more advanced it is than we think as general fans of the game. So I can only imagine as these old men yelling at clouds about, screw analytics, this and that. Listen to that interview. That'll get them really fired up to see what's actually going on behind the scenes. But really a lot of stuff I learned from that interview. And again, thanks to Danny for coming on.
Yeah, definitely. I love the fact when he was talking about different technologies that are used. There's just so many in the game today. And I love the fact that how he's able to relate it to each guy. I think that's fascinating because different pieces of data mean more to different players. And I think that's why I asked him the question about, okay, how do you relate it to a college player who is also trying to balance? I know people take the loose term student athlete, but you only get a certain amount of time with these kids before they have classes and things like that, at least before everything happened. And just be able to his ability to also take one piece of data and apply it to pro ball, I thought was a big tool to help in college, at least to help these pitchers prepare for professional baseball for some of them.
Oh, yeah. And just speaking to a transition kind of from, the major league game, not the major league game so much, being in a major league system and kind of taking that down to the minor leagues. He was speaking to us kind of, off the air a little bit, saying that all this stuff was set up for him. Now he has to learn how to set up all these machines and all these things that read spin rate and miles per hour. So just the learning process of stepping down the level not stepping down a level, so to speak, but going from the major leagues to college is fascinating.
Yeah, a lot of these new technologies is just really interesting. I've made it a point to learn about all this technology, especially as a person that covers the minor leagues. I think if you're scouting players and writing player analysis and stuff like that, you need to have an understanding of what is going on and how players are developed in 2020 and how this process works and everything. And if you're really interested in learning a lot more about it, I highly suggest you all check out the book Applied Technology in Pitching. It's written by Wayne Boyle and Yankees prospect Sean Boyle, and it gives a good overview of a lot of the concepts that Danny talked about. And I'm glad we had a chance to talk with him about it, because it's stuff that I find interesting. I've been learning about this stuff over the last few years. I'm a big fan of TrackMan data. I'm a big fan of Rapsodos. I'm a big fan of the Edgertronic cameras and the other high-speed cameras, the Sonys. And, there is just a lot there that we can learn and make ourselves better when it comes to player evaluation. There's is no longer the world of the old school scouts where you do your gut and you say, oh, he just doesn't look the part. You have to understand, what goes into everything, because these new technologies does make it a little more interesting, because you could find those diamonds in the rough, those guys that may not have some hype around them that can turn into something. And what I know of the Yankees system, and I don't talk publicly about what I know about what the Yankees are working on for obvious reasons, but the technologies, like they're one of the better teams in baseball, and if not the best. And they have their new pitching labs down in Tampa, which is really cool. I wish I had the chance to see them, but there's just a lot of really cool technology in the game right now, and a lot of opportunity to learn about this technology, because you'll find a ton of resources online, and as well as a ton of places where you could learn all about this stuff.
There's just so many different places now you can find this information. It's great to hear from somebody like Danny that knows it so well. And I love the fact when he brought up Tanner Myatt as this guy that nobody really talks about. I interviewed him for an article on the site that's now been up, and you mentioned some of our interviews you can now read without the subscription. But I thought Tanner is a really interesting case because he's a really tall guy, and he's a pitcher, I think, if healthy this year, but eventually, hopefully, we get to playing again. He could be one of those guys that people start to realize because he is finally healthy.
100%. I'm a Tanner Myatt fan. I've been a Tanner Myatt fan since I first saw him pitch, and the first person to really put me on to Tanner Myatt was, if I remember correctly, was Danny from an impromptu conversation we were having at the ballpark. And there's a lot of guys like that. He spins a really good fastball, and we learned a lot in that conversation about spin rate and everything like that. And I think it's just a good conversation. I highly suggest everyone check it out, because you'll really learn a lot about this.
Yeah, like James said, it's definitely one you want to go back and listen to a couple times just to process all the information, because there's just so much in there. One, again, maybe something that Tanner might be on in the future, but I wanted to do something fun here at Pinstripe Prospects while we wait for baseball to come back. And fortunately, we didn't get March Madness in college basketball, but I wanted to bring a little March tournament flavor here. So I came up with the Pinstripe Prospects Top Prospect Tournament. It's 32 players, so shortened field, of top Yankee prospects over the last 10 to 15 years. I used a little bit of Baseball America's top 10 lists of the past decade, and also got some help from my selection committee, aka Pinstripe Prospects co-founder Paul Pagnato III. So thanks to Paul for helping me come up with the last few names that made the bubble. There's no first four. So over the next month, we're going to try to do 1 to 2 matchups a day for you guys on Twitter. So you can log on, go to @PinstripePros on Twitter, and please cast your vote. We have 4 different regions. We have the Brian Cashman region, the Damon Oppenheimer region, the Gene Afton region. We had to have one for the late Kelly Rodman, so Kelly Rodman region. In the semis, the Cashman region will play the Oppenheimer region. Then the Afterman region will play the winner of the Rodman region. You will find the bracket in its entirety on Pinstripe Prospects this week, likely on Wednesday, so you want to check that out. I want to run through the matchups for the first round. We'll try each week to give a little update, so next week, hopefully, we'll talk about what the matchups are in the second round. But let me go dive in here with our little Pinstripe Prospect selection show. In the Cashman region, the top seed is Gleyber Torres. He's taking on Cito Culver, the 8th seed. Your 2-7 matchup, the 2 seeds Luis Severino against the 7th seed Manny Banuelos. In the 3-6 matchup, you have Java Chamberlain, the 3 seed against Dante Bichette Jr. And a good 4-5 here. You got Austin Romine as the 4 seed taking on Chance Adams. So I think that's going to be an interesting one. In the Oppenheimer region, Aaron Judge is your top seed. He's going to take on Dermis Garcia. Tyler Austin's your 2 seed, taking on Andrew Brackman. Davey Garcia, the 3 seed, against Jason Dominguez. So Dominguez does make this as an interesting selection, but we came up with Dominguez here. And a good 4-5 matchup of Yankee prospects no longer with the Yankees. Jorge Mateo against James Caprillion. The Afterman region, you got a battle of catchers. The top seed, Gary Sanchez against Anthony Siegler. The 2 seeds, Miguel Andujar against Rob Refsnyder. Phil Hughes, the 3 seed, takes on Justice Sheffield. And your 4-5 is Tyler Wade against Estevan Florial. Finally, in the Rodman region, Jesus Montero, blast from the past, is the 1 seed here. He'll take on Jacob Lindgren. Dylan Betances, the 2 seed, taking on Ty Hensley. Blake Rutherford, no longer in the Yankee organization, is the 3 seed, taking on Slade Heathcott. And Clint Frazier is the 4 seed against Domingo Acevedo. That's your bracket. James, I'll let you have the floor. What do you think of the bracket? What stands out to you? Let's have a little analysis here.
Give me all of that Luis Severino Manny Banuelos matchup. That's an interesting 2-7 matchup, just because of the magnitude of the prospect level. Manny Banuelos was easily looked at to be the ace of the Yankees. The future ace of the Yankees. And Severino, I don't know, was he ever really shed in that same light? I feel like Banuelos, maybe because I was younger, I don't really remember as much. I remember it just seemed like to me he was mentioned as more of a highly touted prospect than Severino was. I could be dead wrong on this, but from what I remember, these two guys, this is a pretty cool 2-7 matchup, I'd say. And the other one I wanted to tackle was Jorge Mateo and James Caprillion. Interesting because, again, they were part of the same trade to bring Sonny Gray to the Yankees. Those are two other guys that Caprillion was looked at maybe as a future top frontline arm for the Yankees, and Mateo was looked at potentially the shortstop of the future. Because remember hearing he was hitting, I don't know, close to 300 and stealing like 50-some bases. I don't know, just throwing numbers out there, but those were two supremely talented guys that haven't necessarily panned out. So, but again, maybe a little too early to say. So, kind of those are the two matchups that I'm looking at.
This one, that 4-5 is really tough. I covered James Caprilli when he was with Staten Island for a little bit. I really enjoyed talking to him, but that's just my 2 cents. I thought if he stayed healthy, he had a good future ahead of him. Still could. I think a lot of the 4-5s are very intriguing here. Austin Romine against Chance Adams, I think, is interesting because you go off Romine being the former top 10 prospect and at least has made it to a good major league career against Chance Adams, who a lot of people loved. I think that's going to be really close. I think Tyler Wade against Estevan Florial is going to be pretty close, because Tyler Wade at least made it to the big leagues. A lot of people remember him from AAA being that great player. But my favorite matchup, I'm giving you the 3-6s I like. The Davey Garcia-Jason Dominguez matchup is really fun because it's two prospects that are currently in the top 5 in Yankee prospect circles. So I think the fan vote there is going to be real interesting because you get to see who likes Davey Garcia and who doesn't. So I think that'll be interesting. And also, I like the little Phil Hughes, Justice Sheffield action here. Because, again, Phil Hughes, a lot of people remember from the major league side of things, but being a really good top prospect, included 10 to 15 years to put Hughes and Jabba into the conversation here. But Justice Sheffield is another one of those guys. People had the best for him, ended up being better for the Yankees because got him James Paxton. So I'm really intrigued, and I think the one seed that's in the most trouble is Montero because you have Dellin Betances as the 2. A lot of people don't have a really favorable memories of Jesus Montero. But who knows? Maybe even Clint Frazier upsets him in the second round, or Domingo Acevedo. That 4-5 could make a big run against Betances, but I kind of like Dellin in that region.
Just to speak on Montero, I had a 16x20 autograph of Jesus Montero because I thought 11-year-old James O'Connell thought Jesus Montero was a Hall of Famer just because he was kind of the first big-time prospect I remember. So Jesus Montero kind of brings you back some nightmares a little bit because I had this guy penciled in to be some absolute freak. But again, I was like 10, 11 years old. Like, I'm not going to punish myself over that. And he ended up turning into Michael Pineda, who was, I would say, decent in his short tenure with the Yankees. He's not the phenom that they thought they were getting, but he was okay, excluding the Pontar situation on his neck and all the injuries and stuff. But yeah, it's an interesting road to go back down with Jesus Montero, just with me because of how highly I thought of him in my young teen years, whatever it was.
I think the most wide open region, I want to get your thought, James, the Afterman region, because I think Gary Sanchez being the 1, but you got Miguel Andujar at the 2, and I would not be surprised if Hughes or Estevan Florial, let's say, beats Tyler Wade. Maybe people like Florial and upsets Gary Sanchez. I could see anybody coming out of the Afterman region getting to the Final 4.
Yeah, there's some interesting names in there. Rob Refsnyder was pretty highly touted. People thought this was like a major league ready bat that was going to contribute right away at the major league level at that time. I think Sanchez is safe against Siegler because we just really haven't seen enough offensive production there from him. So Gary, I think, is pretty safe there in a 1-8 matchup. I think where you get kind of really tricky is Tyler Wade, Estevan Florial, because there you have kind of two similar profiles in a sense, both left-handed bats, both speedy, and both you're waiting to see more from. So I think it's very interesting where that one will go.
Now, keep in mind, James, I asked you this question because you're talking to the man who made the bracket, but any seating issues here? Somebody seated too high, seated too low? Who got left? Who's that first four out that like you can make a case there should be in this bracket here?
I'm Ty Hensley, Jacob Lindgren. I get he's an 8 seed, but there's some, I think you did a pretty good job here. I'm not gonna beat up on you. I think you did a good job.
Is there one name you wish was on here?
What? Yes, Mason Williams. Mason Williams, I was infatuated with. I remember. I was like, what was it, like 2013? He was coming around. I was infatuated by Mason Williams. I thought he was the next Jacoby Ellsbury at the time when being the next Jacoby Ellsbury was thought to be a good thing.
It's funny you said that Mason Williams was really close. We had a lot of debate on that in the Pinstripe Prospect selection room. We thought about it. I was a season ticket holder for Stallion Yankees, and I remember watching Mason Williams. He seemed to get on base every time. So every time I went to a game, he had a great game. It seemed like. So Mason Williams was really close. He would go to Dayton for the first four. If we had a play and we put Mason Williams there, probably. We don't know who he'd play, but he would be right there. But definitely, I think we should all check out this bracket. It's great, not just because I made it, but I think you'll all enjoy it. It'll be just a good break from everything. So I hope you all enjoy that, and please vote. I want to see what you guys come up with, and I want to react. I want to see will we see some upsets? That's going to be, I think, a lot of fun to talk about over the next few weeks. Normally we have final thoughts. There hasn't been really much to react to in baseball, of course, with everything going on. James, anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
Is there really anything to add? There's just absolutely nothing going on. I got a good, I don't know any of you guys out there that like the corny romantic comedies or whatever, love shows, or Love is Blind on Netflix, pretty good show. Kind of crazy show. If you guys want to hop on that, it's a new thing. That's just how bored I am nowadays. I'm watching Love is Blind. So that's kind of where I'm at. Those are my final thoughts. So my final thoughts there is there are no final thoughts because there's nothing.
I'm going to give my final thoughts. Shout out to Major League Baseball. I know it may seem the easiest thing to do. Each team is going to donate $1 million to their seasonal ballpark employees that depend on it, the paychecks they're not going to be getting for the foreseeable future. So in total, you got $30 million from all 30 teams. I think that's a great initiative that the owners did. And I also want to keep in mind, I wrote an article that's up on Pinstripe Prospects right now. Keep in mind on this whole thing, the impact it has on minor league baseball, especially for these cities that we know we had the whole MILB issue, like will some teams get taken away, the impact it's going to have on some of these smaller markets that depend on minor league baseball, that is a big entertainment value, how that's going to impact them and the players as well. Some of them aren't getting paid. And I think that's a real concern. And also the draft. And it's one thing I didn't get into with Danny. We don't know what happened with the draft. And remember, the scouts aren't looking at anybody. Nobody's playing anymore. What kind of impact will it have on the draft? Will the draft get pushed back? I know these are really small, trivial things, but this is big development time being lost for a lot of these players, and a lot of futures up in the air as well. So I like to make sure we don't forget about them going forward and how it impacts them in addition to the major leaguers.
Yeah, so many things that really you don't know what's going to happen with anything really. Even going outside baseball here, the NBA playoffs. What's happening there? What are we going to do there? The Masters. I'm a big golf guy. I'm hearing an October Masters. Sounds pretty cool now. I mean, it sounds pretty cool, but like kind of want to watch a Masters when it's supposed to be in a month. That's the time, golf's coming back around. There's so much uncertainty going around just in the world in general. And I'm no doctor, but it just seems smart for everyone to just stay home when you can. Don't go to these malls. Stop going out. I don't know why people are going out to all these bars and stuff. Just the more you go out, the more this thing's going to spread, and the longer it's going to take to get back to normal. And I think that's what we all want, just to get back to normal.
So, by the way, let's hope we have this problem in a few months where every sport's going on at the same time, and it's just great again. Where like you can turn on any channel and something's on. I was watching bowling the other day, and I love bowling. I bowled in high school. There was no fans, and it's like going to your local bowling alley and just watching a great bowler bowl. That made me sad, but I thought this was a great show just to distract from everything, and we'll try to be here as often as we can. Next week, we'll do our minor league position review or look at catchers. A lot of great names at catcher: Anthony Siegler, Josh Bro, Donnie Sands, Jason Lopez. I think the lower levels of catching are really interesting, and once we get back to playing again, I think that's going to be a fun position to keep an eye on. So we'll get into that next week, and we'll try to have some other fun things along the way. We want to remind you, of course, you can follow us on Twitter at Pinstripe Pros. Make sure you keep voting. We're going to have the matchups up starting on Wednesday. We'll try to do 1 to 2 matchups a day, and we'll have some fun with that. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram. Give us a rating on iTunes or any of the podcast platforms you listen to. Subscribe. We want to hear from you. If anything you want us to talk about, any questions you have, feel free to send them there. You can email me, rickjkeeler@gmail.com. Call our voicemail number, 908-376-6360. Again, it's 908-376-6360. We want to hear your feedback. We want you involved because we want this to be a distraction for you as well. So from all of us here at Pinstripe Prospects, I'm Ricky Keeler saying stay safe, have a great week, and we'll see you back here next time.
Later.